Hey everyone, so I just saw the Mario movie and honestly I was pretty happy with it. It had really good animation, it was really funny, probably Illumination's best movie, which I know isn't saying much, but still. And it was a very faithful adaptation, so overall I don't really have very many complaints. But that's not why you clicked on the video, is to hear my thoughts on it. No, we're going to be looking at a really terrible review I found of this movie. Just like, it's probably one of the worst movie reviews I've ever seen in my life, honestly. So yeah, let's get right into this.
So wow! I'm kind of shocked at how bad this movie is. Universal knows, though. Universal knows, which is why the embargo is lifting mere hours before the movie premieres.
Okay, first of all, lots of movies do that, so I don't really understand how that's a bad thing or indicates the movie's bad. Also, look at this, look at the visuals of this video. Like, this is literally like one of those graphic designs my passion memes. What am I looking at? It's so bad. Like, the composition is terrible, we have all this weird text, and it's just visual clutter. It's really hard to look at.
I don't think this is gonna make $1 billion. I think it might still have a big opening weekend. I don't even know if it's going to make it to Friday. I think word of mouth on this is going to be toxic, or whatever toxic goo there is in Nintendo world that destroys stuff that it touches.
So because it's not going to earn $1 billion, supposedly, that means it's bad? Like, I don't understand. Like, what's your point here? There's a lot of good movies that don't earn a ton of money. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of my favorite movies ever, and that was a flop. So, yeah. Also, what do you mean Nintendo destroys anything that it touches? Like, wouldn't Nintendo be the reason this movie earns more money because of brand recognition? I mean, never underestimate brand recognition.
So let me walk you through this, right? Because I know a lot of you aren't going to believe me, but I think you're going to be seeing a lot of bad reviews drop right now. And, yeah, it's unfortunately true.
Yeah, I kind of get why a lot of critics don't like it. I mean, I like the movie personally, but if you're a film critic and you don't really care about Mario and you're kind of looking at this as a piece of art, and I can understand the critics not liking it from their point of view. But then again, it doesn't really mean it's a bad movie, just they had different expectations. Which honestly, I don't really know what you would expect from a Mario movie made by Illumination. Like, this is basically the best it could possibly be, considering that.
Now, as I've mentioned before when discussing this movie, I don't play Nintendo games, right? Like, I know who the characters are, well, like the big ones, but I'm certainly not a Nintendo fan. But, you know, just like I say movies shouldn't require homework, this should be accessible to a non-Nintendo fan, especially if it wants to make $1 billion. But, you know, I do love Illumination movies. I watch The Grinch every year. I love Illumination films. I think they're fantastic.
Really? They're not that good. The only serviceable one is Despicable Me, if you're not counting the Mario movie, which in my opinion, the Mario movie is the best movie they've made. So, really, but what's to like about Illumination? It's the most generic, lazy movies imaginable. Maybe that's just me, but I mean, come on. As a movie critic, you should understand how terrible they can be, or at least understand how they are.
Started, and again, out of like 40 of us critics, it was a critics only screening. The all media is tonight. It was a critics only screening, and I would say out of 40, maybe 2 people were enjoying and laughing at the movie. They were having a good time though. Maybe you're one of those too.
Okay, like I said, critics have a very different approach to movies, and you know, that's not going to really represent the audience or how many other people enjoy it, especially if just one screening.
But the rest of us just sat there in stony silence, just waiting for the movie to end. You were like, oh, whew. I mean, I also was not only not enjoying it, but I was shocked that I couldn't get into the movie. I was like, how is this bad?
I mean, can you explain why you didn't like it or why it was bad? I mean, you do touch on that a little bit later in the video, but usually when I watch a movie review, I want people to go into detail as soon as possible about why it was good or bad, instead of just talking about the theater experience they had or something like that. Something that's completely irrelevant to me as a viewer, you know?
I haven't had this hard a time watching a movie since DC Super Pets. I would describe both of these movies as torture to sit through. Whew, and I like comic books, I like mythology, I get into stuff. I'm open to getting into new fandoms. So the fact that I was like, make it stop, was pretty bad. Although I wanted to walk out of DC Super Pets, as I told you, and the only reason I stayed was because, again, I'm reviewing it. I'd love to be able to say, hey, it gets really good. Narrator, it does not.
Okay, good on you for finishing a movie you're reviewing, even if you didn't like it. But can you get to the point? I mean, we've been watching this for a few minutes and you haven't gone into detail about anything or why you didn't like the movie. You've just been talking about, like, going to the theater and eating popcorn and other people's views on it that were in your screening.
And also, the visuals here were pretty good. And I really like Anya Taylor-Joy's Princess Peach and Seth Rogen's Donkey Kong. So, it wasn't quite as bad as Super Pets, but it was close. It was bad. But speaking of the amazing visuals, Super Mario Brothers is available in 3D.
It is? I honestly didn't know that. But also, can we get to the point? You're just talking about all these other aspects about the movie, other than just, oh, it's bad, but not explaining why. Just please get to the point or go into detail about something.
Now, as I said, I've been able to get into other mythologies, but I just couldn't get into this movie despite being a ready and willing participant. I was like, come on, Nintendo World, indoctrinate me. So I thought about it, and I saw it last night, and I've been like, why couldn't I get into this movie? And this morning, eureka, it clicked, and I realized the problem.
Finally, are we actually going to get a review in this review? Jesus, you have wasted so much time. Are you trying to get this video over 10 minutes for the ad revenue, or are you just like rambling, or what? Jeez.
The Super Mario Brothers movie, this latest one, they did the live action one many years ago. But while this is supposed to be an origin story where Mario and Luigi do discover the Mushroom Kingdom for the very first time, I didn't even know it was called the Mushroom Kingdom. I had to look it up. It's not even made clear in the movie.
What? What the fuck?
They literally tell you it's the Mushroom Kingdom in the movie. Did you even watch it? And what's there not to get about a freaking Mario movie? It's the most simplistic thing ever, which, nothing wrong with being simplistic in storytelling, but there's just not much to Mario. It's not a super complex thing. You don't need all this information going into a Mario movie to understand what's going on.
But the movie is written for fans and fans only. Nothing is explained to the audience.
A lot is explained to the audience, and the stuff that isn't explained is usually pretty obvious or can be understood just by looking at the characters and the scenes. It's not really that hard to understand a kid's movie based on Mario, especially by Illumination, the most easy to digest material ever.
Not the world, not the characters, not the circumstances, and not even really the point. Now, some of you might be like, good, I'm a fan, and I just want to get to it. I mean, there's nothing to get to, but good screenwriter, screenwriting, it's always been disrespected in Hollywood, but this is it's at its lowest point right now. Like, a good screenwriter can make this fun for everyone, right? This is like Nintendo Easter Egg the movie, the opposite of Andor. This is just all Easter eggs.
I mean, what did you expect? Plus, it's not just Easter eggs, there's actually a story to it and characters. Maybe not a super great story and super deep characters, but it's there, and it does fine for what it is. I don't know what you were really expecting out of this movie.
You just choke on them. It's too much candy. After a brief opening, which is very Illumination, it seems more Illumination than Nintendo, you could be watching a scene from Sing or Secret Life of Pets, quite frankly. But then after that, there's no story.
There is a story. Bowser gets a superstar to either destroy the world with it or so he can convince Peach to marry him with it. There, problem solved, and the good guys try to stop him. There, that's the entire plot. There you go. That's what it's about. That's a story. I mean, it's not a super deep or complex story, maybe not even that original or that great, but it's good for what it is, and that's really all people are asking for.
Well, and what little story they do have, I found a couple of things. One was confusing. Like, why don't any of the other humans look like Mario and his family? And why is the human world super realistic, yet full of cartoon-looking characters? I was like, that's weird.
Okay, for one thing, a lot, and I mean a lot of animated movies have realistic backgrounds with cartoony characters. Like, just look at any recent Pixar movie. Also, what's so confusing about freaking Mario? It's literally the most simplistic thing ever. Just the most basic thing to ever come up with, which is by design, of course. It's not really a bad thing. Maybe for a movie you could argue that, but still.
The animation, though, again, is stunning. And some of the backgrounds in the human world looked almost real. But again, that was so bizarre that there were cartoons running around in there. Back to the story, I would also say it's a little disturbing.
A Mario movie is disturbing by Illumination. Really. Alright, let's see what you have to say. It'll probably be stupid.
Because apparently in the games, Bowser, I had to look it up, Bowser is obsessed with Princess Peach and has been for a very long time. But in today's marketplace, post-Me Too, to hear Bowser declare that he's going to ask Princess Peach to marry him, which apparently isn't a spoiler because I looked it up and it happens in the games all the time, but he's like, I'm gonna ask Princess Peach to marry me, and like his little sycophant sorcerer is like, what if she doesn't want to? And he's like, then I'll destroy her kingdom and kill everyone she knows. And you're like, wow, that's stalker behavior. And I would say, kind of makes this not appropriate for children, quite frankly.
Okay, for one thing, Bowser is a villain. Like, they're not depicting this behavior as good behavior. Like, he's a villain. Of course he's gonna do bad things. I mean, what do you really want? Plus, yeah, they took it from the games, and it's not really that disturbing or inappropriate. It's not like he wants to, you know, abduct her. Well, actually, no, he does abduct her. Sorry, terrible example. Anyway, it's not like he wants to freaking rape her or something. I mean, come on, man.
And in fact, I would argue that most of the movie is about who's going to date Princess Peach.
No, that's not what the movie is about. It's about trying to stop Bowser, and that's pretty much it. How are you getting that from this movie? Did we watch the same movie?
And that's it! My jaw was on the floor. I'm like, is that really what this movie is about? That is a really outdated story. I think fans and just moviegoers in general, and everybody associated with this film, deserve more. And it's a shame, because Jack Black does a fantastic job as Bowser. You can't even recognize that it's Jack Black's voice. Then Bowser sings and you're like, oh yeah, he's voiced by Jack Black. And you still can't tell that it's Jack Black. And I think that the talent is definitely here. It's really just the script. So Jack Black was fantastic. Also, in an effort to move away from speaking of disturbing, I would also classify this movie as a little offensive.
Oh my goodness. Really offensive? That's a little far. What is even offensive about this? It's a Mario movie made by Illumination for kids. Like, there's nothing offensive about it. Like, I can't wait to hear this.
Because instead of doing the Italian accents, ironically because they were worried about being offensive, instead they decided to give everyone a variation of a New York accent, which again I found kind of offensive. It's like everyone's either in Goodfellas or a Woody Allen movie.
How is including a New York accent offensive? Are we just not allowed to have accents in general anymore? Because that's not really reality. People have accents in real life. I don't see how that's offensive.
And not just in the New York scenes, by the way. Mario and Luigi live in New York City. But you're like, when you get to the Mushroom Kingdom, Donkey Kong Land is the same way. And so you're just kind of like, why would you make that choice?
There were accents in Donkey Kong Land? I mean, maybe for Cranky Kong, but he was literally the only Kong that had accents, so I don't even know what you're talking about right now. And even if they did have accents, what's the big deal? I don't understand how it's offensive.
Like, why do you think that's somehow not offensive and the Italian thing would be? It's just crazy. The movie also leans really heavily on classic hit songs, a little bit the way Guardians of the Galaxy has done. And sometimes it gets your blood pumping. It's not a bad strategy. But here it's very poorly executed. Like, everything, just when you're like, okay, now we're cooking, it peters out. And they're like, okay, we're done. And you're like, oh, you promised me a fun jam.
Okay, this might be subjective, but I honestly didn't like the inclusion of 80s music in this movie. I thought it didn't fit the aesthetic or tone at all, and it just didn't work. I feel like they could have just stuck with the Mario music and orchestral music and it would have been fine, but nope, they had to put in licensed music.
Like when they start to make the Mario Karts, and one of the Kongs is like puts on his shades and he's like, "What do you want me to do for you?" But he just says it with a nod, and you're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And it seems like it's gonna be awesome. The music starts, they turn up the volume, and then they're done.
I mean, yeah, usually movies don't play a licensed song in its entirety, and that would honestly be kind of annoying if they did. So it would be pretty bad for the pacing.
Tired though of girl power for the sake of girl power characters. Like, if you're not going to fully develop them, I just get frustrated because I know certain groups are going to complain. And you know, you should have justification for things. It's like, if you're not going to do it right, don't do it. And again, she's all girl power, but yet the movie is just about who she's going to date. She's a princess in name only. I didn't see her make any rules or control the kingdom or anything.
They literally did show her control the kingdom, and I did not get the impression that she was a girl power character, so I don't even know where you're getting that from. Also, I thought they developed her pretty well. I mean, as much as they could for an hour and a half runtime, but also, it was pretty refreshing to have an hour and a half runtime for a movie. I'm getting really tired of 2.5 hour, 2 hour movies. It was a little refreshing. Though I think this movie would have benefited from an extra 20 minutes or so for some aspects. Like, Luigi doesn't even do anything in the movie, for example, and he could have used more screen time.
You know, she just kind of went on a date with Mario and Bowser was really jealous about it. And you're like, is this really what this movie is about?
No, for the millionth time, it's about Bowser trying to take over the world and them trying to stop him. It's really as simple as that. And they kind of played off the whole thing of him being jealous of Mario for laughs and to show how insecure he is about Peach's love life, you know?
Alright, so speaking of Mario, how's Chris Pratt? Everybody wants to know, how's Chris Pratt? Well, he's doing a thick New York accent, so he doesn't sound too much like Chris Pratt. I mean, occasionally you're like, oh, there he is. And Chris Pratt, by the way, outside of the controversy that surrounds him, he's a very good actor, a very likable actor, and he does a good job in that regard with, you know, the emotion and all that stuff. You know, he certainly is able to deliver in that capacity. But again, the script is so awful.
Is it really that awful though? Because the only point you've covered is who is Peach dating, there's no story, it's offensive, and inappropriate. Which none of that is even true, by the way.
Mario and Luigi's relationship just seems really forced. It's like screenwriter Matthew Fogel, who should never work again, he's done a couple of stuff for Illumination, that's about it. It's like he saw Frozen and decided to do the male version of Elsa and Anna, but none of the work to make it work. And since they insisted on putting Mario in the real world, so to speak, why do he and Luigi wear those funny outfits and gloves? I was like, you guys look ridiculous.
They literally explain why they dress like that in the movie. It's because they're trying to make a trademark. And their family members even make fun of them for it. Do you even pay attention to the movie? Also, Mario and Luigi are brothers. I don't really see how that's a forced relationship, but okay.
I mean, none of it made sense. Nothing in the movie made sense, so it was hard for me to get into any of it. Speaking of Mario and Luigi though, Charles Martinet, he had a nice cameo. He is the OG and current voice of Mario and Luigi in the games, and a lot of fans were disappointed he's not voicing them here. But even I was like, oh, that's Charles Martinet, that's awesome. And I think it was a very nice thing to do for him. He showed up, I think, twice. He showed up like twice. Very, very briefly, but it was cute. Even the action sequences aren't that exciting. There's like no suspense. It's just like, oh hey look, it's like the game.
What were you expecting? A John Wick style action sequence? I mean, it's frickin' Mario. It just jumps on things, you know? Like, what were you even expecting?
But you never really feel like you're running any of the gauntlets yourself. You still look like you're watching the game screen instead of being put into the action. That's the whole benefit of making it a movie.
No, it's the opposite of that. You watch a movie, in a game you're put into the action. So I say they did their job.
And then, when could Mario turn into a cat? I guess, like, if you're into furries, that works. And maybe that'll play really well in Asian markets. I know they love cats over there, like, love cats. But I just felt it robbed Mario of a lot of his personal dignity. I was like, don't do that to Mario. Where's Mario's agent?
I mean, he was in one of the games. Plus, they even made a joke about him being dressed as a cat. Like, all the characters were laughing at him. I thought that was pretty self-aware about it.
There are also 2 end credit scenes, but they're not really noteworthy. One's comedic. The second one tries to set up a potential sequel. They're like, oh, if we make another one of these, this character's gonna show up. Get excited. But that character kind of showed up earlier in the film in the background in a way, like at least a variation of them. I spotted him. And this end credit scene is so quick that it's hard to get super excited unless you're just so excited about that character. Just like the mere tease or mention or like blip of him is enough. So yeah, this is a mess. There's no story. Nothing is explained to newbies like myself. It's kind of offensive, and none of the animation styles fit together because I guess maybe they're different games. I mean, I guess it looks this way in Mario Kart, right? But from a story perspective, it just did not work for me. I have never seen an Illumination misfire this bad. In fact, I don't think they've ever misfired. This is not only the worst movie they've ever made, but in my opinion, the only bad movie they've ever made.
Are you telling me that Minions, Hop, and the Despicable Me sequels were good? Like, I don't feel like I even need to say anything about that. That just speaks for itself. Like, you didn't like this movie, but you like those? Really? I mean, come on. What is your taste in movies? How are you even a movie critic if you like those movies? I mean, I know that sounds a little harsh. Nothing wrong if you like those movies, but I mean, I don't know. If you say they're better than the Mario movie, then I don't really know what to tell you. But anyway, that's about it for this video. I mean, there was a little bit more, but it's just her saying she doesn't recommend it and all that. Nothing really too important or something we didn't already know. So yeah, that was a pretty bad video. Probably one of the worst movie reviews I've ever seen. But so yeah.